Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and today's a video I've been looking forward to publishing for you guys. We start off from Port Augusta, head out to Quorn to the information centre, pick up the access keys, and then follow that map you just saw out to Warren Gorge and Arden Hills self-drive four-wheel drive track. So here we are, just heading out of Port Augusta. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Flinders Ranges, the tracks there are broken up into sort of two groups. There's public access tracks, and then there's tracks on private land that you have to pay to access. Arden Hills is one of those, and personally I think it's a great system. It ensures that the tracks on private land are still accessible, and based on this experience, I have to say it was well worth it. Quorn is about 40 k's I think from Port Augusta. There you go. It is about 40 k's. One of the key things on the way between Port Augusta and Quorn is the Pitchy Ritchie Railway, which we didn't have time on this trip to check out, but is well worth having a look at if you're touring in the area. It's an old historical steam railway that still operates today, and you can travel on it obviously for a fee. There's a campground near one of the stations as well, so check that out if you're in the area. This rail bridge here is one of the Pitchy Ritchie Railway rail bridges, so it does sort of parallel the road. We had a cracking day for weather today, and we were really looking forward to getting into the Flinders Ranges. You can see that's actually the train there from the Pitchy Ritchie Railway. We were fortunate enough to capture that. Now, as I was saying, you go to Quorn where you pay the fee. So depending on exactly where the tracks are, they're different information centres will have the access keys. Basically, you pay the fee, they give you the key, they give you the map, they record your name and your vehicle registration, and you drop the key back later that day or the next day, depending on what you've arranged with the information centre. We got a lot of information about tracks and access and everything from the information centre in Port Augusta. The staff there were really helpful. Not having been in the area before, that was really good background to get to learn a little bit about how it all works in the Flinders Ranges. And as you just saw there on the screen, it's about 21 k's from Quorn out to Warren Gorge, Arden Hills. Here we are, just arriving at the entrance to Warren Gorge. So this is all privately owned land. So it's a public access private reserve, I guess. It does have a free day use area, and there are campgrounds here as well, or campsites. This area in the main gorge is really popular with rock climbers, from what I understand, and there are a few people there climbing, which you can see just on the right there when we arrived. We made our way through the public access area and day use area up to the gate where the actual self-drive course starts. Hi everyone, so here we are in the Flinders Ranges on the alternate trip instead of the Simpson Desert, and our first real day in the Flinders, and it's been epic. So for those of you that didn't know, the Flinders Ranges have public access tracks, and then they have these private tracks as well, and there's a whole heap of them. So they've solved that dilemma of tracks cutting through private land and private landowners locking the gates and all that kind of thing, in that they have agreements with all the landowners. You pay a fee. It's managed by the information centres that are run by the councils. So you go there, you pay a fee, they record your registration details,
and they give you a key to the gate. You come and do the track and you drop the key back afterwards, and it seems to work well for everybody. Yes, it costs you money, it's not free, but what do you get? So we're out here at Warren Gorge. We've just done Arden Hills, which was recommended in the literature as one of the best tracks out here to do. There's a full day version which we didn't have time for. We've done the 3 to 4 hour version, and it took us about 3.5 hours, and that included fixing the bash plates partway through. So on the literature, this is ranked as requiring a high clearance, low range 4-wheel drive and an experienced driver. I would definitely agree with that. You definitely need all of those things. It starts off pretty tame, but there are definitely some very gnarly rock steps, very large climbs, some big steps and ruts and things, and you know, there's probably about 4 or 5 really quite technical parts to this track that are as tough as anything I've driven in the Vic High Country. So yeah, definitely for experienced drivers. It'd be a really awesome place to come and bring a couple of mates and you know, get them experiencing difficult tracks. So the 3 to 4 hours kind of a figure 8 loop, and as you can see behind me, you know, the setting here is just outstanding. The weather's looking pretty good at the moment. We had some pretty crazy winds, which you'll see on the video up there, but we couldn't be happier. So this was $60 to come out and do this, and honestly for me, I'm going to say it was $60 well spent. Mark, who's driving the camera there for us, agrees that it was $60 well spent. So it's an epic setting. The views are outstanding. You've got views on both sides of the range as you go up and over. There's lots of wildlife. It's just amazing. There is a day visitor area, so if you're in the area and you're not sure, you can always come and just check out the day visitor area. There's also campgrounds here, which I believe you have to book, and there's a fee for probably. And there's a couple of campsites within the track area as well behind the lock gates. If you're doing this all day one, you can probably arrange to do that as part of it. So Warren Gorge, Arden Hills Track, $60. If you're here, come along.
As you heard there on that intro that was actually recorded at the end of the track, it was prone to getting quite windy while we were here, and you'll see some of that on the track. Always refreshing when the key you've been given actually fits the lock. And yeah, as I said in that intro, it does start off quite tame, but that changes pretty promptly. So it's definitely a challenging little drive through here, and definitely I'd recommend it if you're looking for amazing views and a bit of a challenge. Would be really fun to do with a couple of people with you in a convoy as well. So yeah, as I said, this first start is a pretty well graded, just gravel road essentially. Working your way up over the hills. There's not a lot of vegetation in this area. It is still kind of a desert area, so that was very different to travelling in the high country where you're used to seeing trees everywhere. There's this tussocky sort of serrated grass everywhere, and you know, trees really only seem to be down in the valleys where water collects, which makes sense. First little crossing of a dry creek bed. So there were a lot of creek beds on the property here. None of them had water in them at the time that we were doing this, which was amazing given how much water we'd seen elsewhere on this trip. So I've really got to wonder, what does it take for those creeks or rivers to actually end up having water in them? I mean, possibly the Flinders hasn't had as much rain as areas further north had. But yeah, you do have to wonder. So making our way through this first area, as I said, it's pretty much just a graded gravel road, this starting off section, and most of the country that you can see here in the distance, this is a huge property, and most of that country is actually part of this property, which is pretty amazing. Another little creek bed. Access here is a little bit eroded, nothing too difficult. Again, there was a little bit of evidence of maybe small amounts of water having been there once upon a time, but nothing current. I think there was a bit of an old rock quarry there on the right hand side. And lots of the hills were like this one, rocky, gravelly hills with not a lot of vegetation on them. Those desert succulents are the major type of vegetation that you see. Grass trees, I think they're called. And this one is pretty typical. As always, it was steeper than it looks on camera. You look at that shot and you go, why did you film that? It was actually a lot steeper than that, but it's fairly typical of a lot of the hills. Rocky, shaly, a little bit loose, but not too difficult to drive. We were starting to wonder at this point, is this going to get hard? You know, we'd read the intro and gave it a pretty good rap as being fairly challenging. As I said, we were not disappointed. Like so many things, the further you get from the entry and potential help, the more difficult it seemed to get. Yeah, a little bit more broken up, a little bit of a rock step there. Now this section here was our first indication that, okay, we could be in for some really steep stuff. Again, I keep saying it, the camera doesn't do it justice. This felt super steep, both sides. Going down this side and then going up that other side, just felt really steep. It was also a little bit loose, and this was our first real indication that, okay, there might be some reasonably difficult terrain to traverse. Already you can hear that wind through the microphone on the camera. And there's a few big sheets of rock on that climbing track on the far side there. A lot of it's just gravel, and you can see the work the tyres are doing there to pull the vehicle up that hill, leaving behind a bit of a track behind the vehicle. And that last section that we're coming to now was probably the steepest, and had a little bit of a rock step there as well, and it was a bit of a case of trying to find the best line where you could get some traction. Good fun drive though. Now with the long shot there, it doesn't really show you the track, so I have put the GoPro footage in here as well, so you can get a bit better idea of what it actually looked like. It's probably one of the reasons this video is fairly long, because I did want to show you guys as much as I could what the track actually looked like. So this side, as you can see there, rocky, loose gravel. And as you can probably tell, having seen the long shot, the GoPro just makes it look even less steep than that makes it look. And then this side is much the same, but with a few larger rocks, a few humps and bumps. Really good steady long climb though. Yeah, as you saw, traction wasn't too bad. As long as you kept the throttle fairly steady, and didn't get too carried away. and these sections were like just a little mini rock step there, part way up the hill, just to keep it interesting, and then the last climb to the top before pushing on. So ridge driving here was quite different to driving ridge lines in the high country. They were very rounded ridge lines here, rather than the steep drop-offs that you're used to in the high country. And you can see the track ahead of us there. But look at that view, and you're not seeing the view to the right hand side where you look back across the rest of the Flinders Ranges, and it was just spectacular, really was. Little bit of a lumpy beeline here that I decided to take just to keep it interesting. You can see the exposed rock on the track there. Such a rocky area. But yeah, we're certainly enjoying that view. Sometimes, not at the moment, but sometimes it was a little hard to actually tell where the track was going. It's not always particularly well worn. And if you're getting the feeling that you go up and down a lot of hills on this track, that's very true. Again, this one here, a little bit rutted out in places. Some glimpses there of that view to the distance. Just really never got old. Another steep little climb on the next hill as we're working our way across to that range on the far side. Lighting in these is not the best. It was sort of really cloudy and sort of overcast and windy. Blue skies in the distance, but not so much where we actually were. A little bit of a lumpy access track here, heading down to one of the dry creek beds. And I think this is one of the areas where I saw some signs indicating there were campsites here. So that is an option. I think that you can pay a different fee and arrange to stay overnight on the property and do the longer course over sort of 2 days if you so desire. But check that out with the information centres. But certainly. Always impressed with how easy the Padge drives up some of those obstacles. Nice steady throttle control, no wheel spinning, just drive it up there. And consequently I've continued to run all terrains as well, because generally by the time I'm having traction issues with the all-terrains, people running mud terrains are having similar issues, and because the car is my daily driver as well, yeah, I could do without the road noise. So this is the back section, and this is where it really did start to get pretty interesting. We started off with this sort of rocky, lumpy little climb, which, if you keep an eye on how much the car's moving, gives you a little bit of a snapshot into how lumpy some of these sections actually were. And over this side, for whatever reason, there's a bit more scrub around. came up around that corner. A couple of little wheel lifts there, and saw this massive rock step up in front of me, and that was big, really big and unexpected. So had the first go, just trying to sort of crawl up over it, no traction to be had. So backed off for a second go. And yes, for those of you that keep asking me, do I use my rear diff lock? Yes, I do. And that was the difference. Straight up and over it. Handy to have in situations like that where that little bit of extra traction makes all the difference. So this is the same section of track, again just filmed from the GoPro on the car, give you a little bit more perspective on what the track actually looked like. The longer shots from the camera don't always show that. So a nice big rut or hole there in the middle of the track that we had to span. Again, a couple of ruts there, and likewise in front of this rock step. And you can see that hole on the other side that you saw the car sort of drop into. So that's the first go without the rear diff lock in. And when you see how much that bonnet drops down, it gives you some idea of just the size of that rock step. And up and over. And of course it wasn't too long, and we were crossing another valley and climbing another hill. Certainly one thing we found with this track is you never quite knew what you were going to find coming around the corner. And as it's come up on the screen there, keep an eye out for the skippies. We did see a bit of wildlife here, just on the right hand side of the track there. As we're making our way up over those rocks. And not sure if this fence line was the boundary of the property or just the boundary of the four-wheel drive track section, but we now follow this fence line for a little while, and yeah, the track here was a little bit off camber, and that gives you some idea of some of the views we've been enjoying. Up here on one of the high sections of Warren Gorge. That wind is pretty crazy. Look at this view. And that's the track ahead. Hard to see through the trees there, but yeah, we can certainly see there's some steep sections coming up, and you can see how much those trees are moving. That really spectacular part of the Flinders Ranges.
Just
those lakes you could see in the long shot of the camera there, they were a lot more visible to the naked eye. Nice little rocky descent here. A few trees sort of close over on the track. And again, little rocky section with sort of diagonal step there on the track. This particular section wasn't crazy difficult or anything, but still just good fun driving. Clearly this section of track has some water run down it at times. Just opted to span those ruts and drive on the high points. And yeah, still plenty windy out there, as you can see from those trees. And every time you crested a hill on this part of the track, you were treated to another amazing view. And very quickly we're on a track very similar to what you're used to seeing in the high country, on the side of the hill with a reasonably steep drop off on one side. And you can see where we're going to end up on that steep little knoll in the distance there on the left side of the frame. So again, the GoPro smooths everything out, so you can see from this external shot just how windy it was. It was crazy windy, and it was affecting the vehicle a little bit, which made driving some of the steep stuff a little more interesting. Nice little rocky descent here. Getting ready for that next climb. Until you got there, you really didn't know what these climbs were sort of going to hold. As you can see, this one's got a fair bit of loose rock on it, and the further up you get, the larger and looser those rocks seem to become. Again, just best to be nice and steady on the throttle. What you can't see is the big ruts up over that rock step there that we're just climbing up over, which is why I'm sort of hugging that left bank, and I sort of got stuck on that rock there. That was a gnarly little section to drive. So this is the on-car view of that last section, so you can see what I'm seeing out the windscreen there. Big hole there in the middle that I'm trying to sort of avoid, and then a decent rut on the right hand side there that I was also trying to avoid by hugging that left bank. We kind of ended up, I think, with the rear wheels almost sliding into it anyway, and just kind of launched our way through it. Still following that fence line, as you can see. This one's a little bit of an easier climb. But a nice long steady climb nonetheless. and there were certainly plenty of those. And never having heard of this area before, I did find once we've gotten back and researching the area a bit more, there's a few videos out there on Arden Hills, but I really wanted to show you guys as much of the track as I could, which is part of the reason this video is as long as it is. So hope you enjoy that. Because there are just amazing views from so many sections of this track, and the terrain is so different. One minute you're driving, you know, almost a two-wheel drive gravel road, and the next minute you're driving some fairly technical rocky sections of track. Not sure how much traffic the track gets. I mean, as you can see, it's in quite good condition, generally speaking. Now, not sure if you'll be depending what device you're watching this on, if you can hear that.
Bash plates strike again. So after some of those big gnarly rock steps that we've gone up and down, the main central big heavy bash plate screws have vibrated and rattled loose again. Looks like they've stripped the threads. I brought replacement screws with me. So between some replacement bolts and cable ties, we're trying to get this to the point where we can complete the rest of this track. Looks like ultimately we're going to end up over there, so just hoping that the real gnarly stuff is behind us. Let's have a look at what we've got down here. Yeah, it all looks pretty doable. So yeah, I've got 6 cable ties and one sort of bolt half in on my side, and Mark's got a few cable ties on his side and doing his best to get another bolt in now.
So heading on from there, was conscious that that large bash plate wasn't super well secured, so did try and be a little mindful of that. Fortunately, we didn't have any more issues. So since being back from this trip, I have been working on a longer term solution for those bash plates, given they keep giving me so much grief, and I think I might have found one. So just as I'm recording this and editing this video, I'm working on that. So if that works, you'll no doubt see a video about that. So this descent here was a little bit lumpy, taking it nice and slow. I really didn't want to load those cable ties up too much that are holding that large bash plate on. And it was a little bit of a case of trying to choose the right line. I think I was making my passenger a little nervous there with how close I was getting to the edge. Not a lot of room for movement on this track, as you can see. You've got that sort of cliff on the left hand side, and then the rocky rock face on the right hand side. Certainly would have loved to have spent more time in the Flinders exploring more of the four-wheel drive tracks there, and we'll definitely be going back. Not sure exactly when, but definitely want to go back to this part of the world. Arden Hills was a great taste, and we did get to tour a little bit of the main area of the Flinders, as you'll see, but not any more of the four-wheel drive tracks, unfortunately. A few goats there, so kangaroos and goats. Not sure if they're domesticated goats, part of a herd, or just wild goats. Fences certainly aren't a problem for them. Found their way through that wire fence pretty readily. Another nice little rocky descent. And again, you didn't have a lot of room to move on this track. It was really just a case of taking the line that was in front of you. And you can see there in this long shot the big sheet rock, a little bit off camber. Again, a little lumpy there. Heading down to a fairly tight looking hairpin that was, according to the literature, named $10,000 corner, not because it does $10,000 worth of damage to your car, but apparently that's what it cost in operator time to cut this out. And even on this long shot here, you can see that massive big rut, big erosion channel there, which was a bit of a hazard. And hence I've done that in 2 movements, just to make sure I didn't put a wheel down in that. And it was a reasonably steep descent down through here as well, particularly this later section here. It wasn't really a good place to stop. So once again, just shared the on-car GoPro view, so you can see how much of the track there on that corner is eroded. That's, you know, part of the area where you'd normally like to be utilising that for turning. And it's definitely well eroded. You can see how deep that goes. You can see daylight through there. And then another big erosion channel on the left hand side of the track there. A little bit of a fall away there on the right, so there really wasn't any brilliant lines to be taken. And then down here, again, the GoPro view doesn't really do this justice, but this is like rock step after rock step, reasonably steep. Certainly a lot steeper than it looks on camera, which is why I wasn't stopping here to pick up the cameraman. I drove all the way down to the bottom here before stopping to pick him up. And you'll see with an external shot looking back up there just how steep and lumpy that actually was.
So this is what we just drove down with one of the bash plates attached mostly with cable ties. Some pretty gnarly rock steps there. You'll be able to see as Mark walks down it just how steep that actually is and how big some of those steps are.
That certainly gives you a better idea of what we're dealing with there, that's for sure.
Some big ruts up there. What?
So from there it was really a case of working our way through a series of little gorges, heading towards a lookout. There's a large hill on the property that is designated on the track notes as a lookout. Again, crossing another one of those dry creek beds here. nice steep little exit. And as you can see, the terrain sort of changed from one section to the next. So you know, I really did keep it interesting. It was a solid 3.5 hours of driving, and as you can tell from the length of this video, I've shared a fair section of the track with you. I definitely recommend, if you're in the area, you know, put this one on your list to do. Has a little bit of everything. Easy start, some really technical rocky sections, steep stuff, tight little sections of track, big open views, just everything. And you can see here we're coming out of this sort of scrubby area, coming back into a larger, you know, open desert section, and yes, yet more skippies. Just keep an eye on the left hand side of the track there. There they go. Probably thought they were trees, some of those grass trees, but no, they didn't go too far. They seemed reasonably used to vehicles. Just sort of moved away from the track a little bit. Yeah, when we actually went to book this and get the key at Corn, there was rain forecast for later in the day, and so they were a little bit wary of giving us the key. Two reasons: one, track damage, driving it in wet conditions, but also it gets a lot slipperier, which I could see, and a lot more challenging and high risk of actually ending up stuck in some of the sections if trying to drive it in the rain. You can hear that wind noise coming through the GoPro probably as we're working our way up to the hill here, which is the designated lookout. You're not going to find parking bays or lookout fencing or anything, so it was kind of a case of just nosing our way up and figuring out, okay, where is the actual top of this lookout without pushing over too far. So yeah, you can see there the track we've driven, part of the track we've been driving, that's where we stopped over on that ridge line with the views of those lakes to the distance. Just amazing country. That's $10,000 corner there. You can see how much they've had to build that up. Just outstanding. Just well worth the view, well worth the effort of getting up there. Those ridges there ahead were, yeah, just amazing to see. And working our way back here, so from the lookout, it's basically a matter of heading back over a couple of ranges, couple of hills. Nice little shaly little exit here. And back towards the main Warren Gorge. So we're back on that more desert open section of the property. As I said earlier, it's amazing how much it changes, and you can see here the track itself in that section was barely making an indent. Whereas sections like this, where it's rocky and you've got that tussock grass, it's more evident. And yes, of course, more skippies. They seem to appear almost out of nowhere. They're camouflaged so well in the grass there. It was the afternoon when we were here, but yeah, surprised to see how many were out and about. And just another long, steady climb there before moving on, not too long after that, to yet another one. So we sort of liken this to, it's almost like the whole Vic High Country just compressed into one tight little area where you're going up and down hills all the time. They're not quite as high maybe as the Vic High Country peaks, but really compressed. So you're almost never driving on flat ground, except at the very tops and the very bottoms of the hills. You always seem to be, you're either going up a hill or down a hill. Yeah, nice rocky lumpy little climb here as well. All sort of presenting their own unique little challenges. So I can't really say, is this the best four-wheel drive track in the Flinders Ranges, because I don't know, because I haven't driven the rest of them, but it's we certainly enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it. It is rated as one of the more difficult ones. And again, look at that vista as you crest this hill. Just outstanding. I keep saying this, but the camera does not do it justice. That view just seemed to go on for miles. And yes, one of those elusive red arrow signs pointing us in the right direction. Almost looks like a bit of a moonscape there. Little rock step down here onto the next section of the track. Just when you think you're sort of back onto the two-wheel drive section, you're not. And yeah, this was one of those sections. It was so rocky through here, it was at times hard to pick exactly where the track was. Obviously when you got the grass either side of it, like this section coming up, it's quite apparent. More skippies. You see a nice long rocky descent here before another long steady climb up that next hill ahead of us. As I was saying, it's this whole track, you're really driving on flat ground. You always seem to be making your way down or up the next hill. Another little rock step here. That's the thing, you can never take this place for granted. Little hidden challenges all the way along. Promise of some better weather in that blue sky. And as we're approaching the top of this hill, a little bit rockier. You can see there, again, the tyres are working reasonably hard to give us some traction. Just up that little rock step. and over the top of the hill. One of the few flat sections here where we're getting a chance to really just enjoy the view. I mean, you've got that rocky ridge off to the left hand side there, the hills into the distance. I keep saying it, but it was amazing. Working our way down here, you can see the track up ahead of us there as we're heading back towards Warren Gorge. So that fork in the nearest mountain range there, or hills, that is Warren Gorge, that is the entrance, and that's where we're heading back towards now. Gives you some idea of just how much terrain you cover on this track. Nice lumpy section here. I think this is maybe the last valley to cross. Last larger one anyway. But again, it certainly wasn't leaving us without a few last minute challenges. A few sort of erosion channels on this section of track, and the hill on the far side there as well. And of course, it's steeper than it looks on the far side as well. A little bit lumpy this section as well. Just taking this nice and slow and steady. You did see this a lot, the sort of side tracks that aren't actually part of the marked course, so it is important to follow your map and stay on the course that you're meant to be on. So you can see climbing up this other side here, decent size rut in the middle there. I've just chosen to span that, made it a lot less eventful than it might have been. And then just starting to climb up that rocky section. So that same section again, just from the onboard GoPro, you get a better sense of just how big that rut through the middle of the track there is. There's definitely a decent sized hole. And then some good sized rocks, making those rock steps that we climbed up and over. And again, you can see that rut cutting through the track there, where we've had to climb up the far side and work our way around. Pretty rocky little section here. Good fun and different to most of the other sections of this track. And the whole time you've got that view. So yeah, as I said before, that gap between the two hills there is Warren Gorge, and that's the exit. And we've got a pretty straight run to get there from here. A little arrow sign there pointing us down here. Little dry creek crossing again. Being a paid track, it was super well maintained. Just a pleasure to drive, and when I say well maintained, obviously they don't grade the whole thing and make it easy. Yep, one last skippy. They've left the difficult parts in, which is what you want. That's why you're here. You can see the rock there just below the surface. And the final gate and the end of the Arden Hills Track. So look, thanks for watching, guys. We thoroughly enjoyed this drive, really enjoyed making this video. It was great to actually revisit several weeks after having filmed it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Like this video if you liked it. Please comment down below with any questions, and as always, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.